I don't know if you're like me, but I have witnessed a lot of conversations lately, whether those are in discussion groups on Facebook or on Twitter or in emails or in webinars, and people have been putting other people down for putting out the wrong kind of content or having the wrong approach. Well, let's discuss. Well, welcome to Legal Marketing Minutes, where I share short bursts of current marketing news and advice. I'm your host, Nancy Myrland. If we haven't met, I'm a marketing, business development, content, social, and digital media speaker, trainer, and advisor for lawyers and their legal marketers. Your time is valuable, so let's get started, okay? Well, you know what this is? I'm sure you will agree. This whole coronavirus, COVID-19 time frame that we're going through is such an unprecedented time. I mean, all of us have lived through something weird or odd or major, or, I mean, you attach the word to it, but it's been nothing like this, where every part of the world has been affected, and every person really has been affected, because if you and I don't have it, and maybe some of us do listening, then we know somebody. I know now a handful of people who have or have gone through this. And of course it's worrisome. But what I think that's also doing is causing a lot of people to try things differently. It's causing them to be a little bit off their game or on their game in a much different way than they were before. And my concern is that I continue to hear a lot of people say, and they do it almost with, a tone that is kind of bothersome, where they're being very definitive about saying that somebody else is doing something wrong. Like, I have heard this a number of times, stop hosting so many webinars because nobody has time for your webinars. And funny enough, not funny enough, but then I talked to friends who have said, we maxed out our webinar room at 4,000 people the other day because people were so interested in this topic. And another friend who has said, you know what, every webinar that we host is maxed out. And then I hear other people who say, stop using this wording, stop using that kind of a graphic. And they're not necessarily saying it in a helpful manner and saying, why don't you use this instead, or consider using this. Stop using it. It's not good. Or, you know what, this is the wrong way to do it. And the message I'm not trying to send is, don't try to back off from being helpful to people and making recommendations and giving people things to think about. But I'm also cautioning all of us not to be so judgmental about the approach that others are taking. I have several firms that I get emails from. I subscribe to their newsletters or in their blogs, and I'm getting something from them every day. I open up a handful of them. I don't think poorly of any of them for sending them, because you know what? That's their job, to educate and to protect the people that they do business with and their clients and those who sign up for their communication. And they're just out there trying to help those clients and, you know what? Keep their businesses alive. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I have a business I have to keep alive. So I have to balance that fine line of, did I say that right? Balance the fine line of trying to put out content that is helpful. And I'm trying to do that by listening to the questions that are asked, and then trying to create content that addresses those questions that have been asked, because what better way to find out how to help people than by listening to their questions, right? It came straight out of their mouths. But what I worry about is that we really need to understand that people are just out here trying to create their own blueprint. They're out here trying to figure it all out just like you are. And, as my good friend Roy Sexton says, why don't we try to keep above the fray? And that comes in a number of ways. That comes in trying not to be really judgmental about people, particularly behind their backs, and particularly maybe sometimes in a passive aggressive way where they're just referring to people. And sometimes those people figure out that you're referring to them because it's kind of obvious. And then not assuming that your suggestions are the absolute right way to do it, and that people should be backing off on their approach, or they should be stepping up on some other approach, because we're not in their shoes. And we don't know, when we tell people to stop having so many webinars or whatever, we don't know that there are people out there maxing their webinar rooms out because they're providing information that is really critically important to their clients, their prospects, media, influencers, whatever, referral sources. And, I think it's okay to continue to produce content that is helpful and that addresses these topics that we think are helpful to our clients clients and to gather those in a special place on our websites or our blogs. But I guess I'm just trying to bring the rhetoric down a little bit so that we aren't being so critical and so judgmental of the approach that others are taking, because people are just trying to make a living and they're just trying to figure out what the right approach is. And not any one of us, and I include me in this, not any one of us we're not the ones that should be telling everybody exactly how they should do it. Now, should we be trying to make suggestions to people about what a nice approach would be? You bet. Somebody a couple weeks ago said, it was kind of a double-edged sword, said stop having so many webinars because general counsel don't have time for them, and they're sending their junior people to these webinars because they don't have time for them. And why don't you instead just create a one-page summary, which would be really helpful? And two thoughts about that. That person maybe didn't know that there are a lot of other people who are finding these webinars helpful. But the part that I loved about it is the positive and very constructive recommendation to create that one-page summary to give people as a takeaway, or if they missed it, offer it then after the webinar so that people who did sign up for it and couldn't attend, so that people are left with something that they can read and that is a summary. So I think it's good to be creative. It's good to make suggestions. I think it's good to have positive suggestions and to give positive reinforcement, and to be very cautious about the approach that a few are taking where they are acting like somebody else's approach is definitely wrong and that people definitely need to stop. Keep sharing. I think we all need to keep sharing when we might have frustrations, or, maybe somebody's sharing when they're feeling anxiety and telling us what isn't helpful in their specific situation, because that does make business owners, and lawyers are business owners, it does make all of us who are business owners more aware of what's going on out there so that we can then modify our approach that way. But to go out of our way to tell people they're doing something wrong is, I think, probably not as constructive as all of us really, really know how to be. So again, and I hope you're not taking this as though I'm telling any of you to do what I just said, or that I'm doing what I just told you not to do. I hope I'm not coming across that way. But I'm just suggesting that we all need to modify our approaches and be a little more gracious when we are judging other people right now, and hopefully this lasts into the future, because every single human being on this planet is different from the next, and every single lawyer and every single firm is different from every other lawyer and every other firm, and to test different approaches to see what works is absolutely a wonderful, smart, productive, beautiful thing to do. All right. If you have any thoughts about this, I would love to hear them. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending a few of your legal marketing minutes with me. If we're not connected yet, please feel free to visit me on my website. It's at myrlandmarketing.com, and that's MYRLAND marketing.com. And I have, in case they're helpful, I have all of the blog posts that are related to, or somewhat related to, maybe even cousins of, this situation that we're going through right now. I have those in what I have called the Coronavirus Communications Center on my blog, and it's just myrlandmarketing.com/coronavirus. All right, until next time, I'm Nancy Myrland. Thank you so much for taking some time to spend here with me today. Take care.